I want to draw a distinction between distribution and acquisition because this is something that comes up in the comments all the time in my videos. People say, you don't need 4K, no one is watching 4K, 4K isn't going to be mainstream for another 10 years as a viewing format. And I might agree with that, I might disagree with it, but it doesn't matter because it's all on the distribution side of things. It's what people are watching, it's what they're consuming, but it has nothing to do with acquisition and what's actually being shot. And I think that if you're shooting anything in 2016 and moving into 2017, if you're shooting anything nowadays, I think it should be 4K, at least. The flexibility and the benefits that you get with shooting 4K are just it's so much better over 1080p. First of all, you get the resolution, which a lot of cameras that shoot 1080p aren't actually 1080p. I say this a million times. If you don't believe me, go check out some of my other videos where I talk about the 5D Mark III not being 1080p. In fact, I have two, or at least two videos talking about the 5D Mark III not being 1080p. So there's tons of cameras out there that all say they're 1080p. They might or might not be. You have to do the test to find out yourself, but I can tell you a lot of them aren't. So with 4K acquisition, shooting 4K, you can downscale to true 1080p, as high quality as 1080p can look, and you don't have to deal with that crippled consumer quality 1080p that they sell you at Best Buy. You want to avoid that. So shoot 4K for that reason. When you scale things down, your noise becomes smaller, right? Your pixels of noise become smaller or shrink, and so noise becomes less of a problem. It's less apparent. That's really nice. When you shoot 4K, you can crop and reframe because on that distribution side of things, people are consuming 1080p. So you can shoot 4K and punch in for that kind of second shot, second angle if you want. I don't use it all the time, but it's nice to have. It's a handy feature just to crop in, to reframe, to stabilize if you're doing any kind of warp stabilization or other stabilization method in post-production. It's helpful to have the extra resolution, a little bit extra on the sides, and you can kind of crop that off rather than shooting 1080p and only having that limited resolution to work with. And 4K just in general is kind of future proofing for that day when, yes, people will be consuming and viewing content in 4K. It may never happen. People might just stop at 1080p, and that might be good enough for the mass market. But I still don't think that should stop you from shooting 4K or 5K or 6K or 8K. On the acquisition side of things, shooting at a higher resolution is so valuable. You look at photography, no one would fault a photographer for shooting 30 megapixels or 40 or 50 megapixels or 80 or 100 megapixels, even if what they're printing is for a photo album. Why would you fault them for that? I mean, I guess you could complain about it, but really at the end of the day, what does it matter? Because there's so many different cameras out there, all shooting insanely high resolution. And you'll hear people say, oh, well, you only really need 12 megapixels to do a quality print. Okay, well, great. But if you have 30 or 40 or 50, what harm is it to you? It's, the distribution side of what it's being printed on or how it's being displayed isn't always as important as how the image is being acquired. And that's what's so valuable about 4K. So any camera nowadays that's coming out, if it's not shooting 4K and I criticize it for that, and someone just says, well, no one's watching 4K, that is not the argument that we're having. We're talking about something totally different. If you want to talk about distribution and whether cable companies and internet providers can keep up with 4K and 5K and 8K content, that's a conversation that we can have. But when we're talking about the cameras and how these images are being shot and how they're being captured, we need to have that conversation. And oftentimes I feel like it comes from this place where they want to justify that 1080p is good enough. And 9 times out of 10, it is good enough. But for that extra benefit of 4K, the stuff that we went through, I may have even missed some benefits. Let me know if I did. I'm sure there's other benefits to shooting 4K. Just whatever came off the top of my head is what came out. But there's so much value in shooting 4K for that flexibility. And now with codecs, file sizes aren't enormous, right? If you're shooting 4K raw, I get it. That is a lot of data. But if you're shooting, a more compressed codec, even if it's, still 422, 10-bit or something like that, having that extra resolution there to play with. It gives you flexibility in post-production that you wouldn't have otherwise. And ultimately, I think makes your images better and makes your footage better. And at the end of the day, that should be the goal. And so if you want to stop yourself at 1080p, that's totally fine. If you want to limit yourself because that's all people are watching, go right ahead. It doesn't really matter to me personally, but I don't think that gives you the right to criticize other people like myself who want to shoot 4K for those benefits in post-production and just benefits overall in terms of image quality. So that's my 2 cents. I just had to get it off my chest because I keep seeing it over and over and over again. People in the comments saying, well, people aren't watching 4K, so why shoot 4K? And it's about more than that. And we have to have that conversation, not the conversation about what people are watching, because I get that. It's just drawing that distinction between distribution and acquisition.